The conversation around Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds has taken an interesting turn recently, especially after the couple unexpectedly appeared together at a football match in Wales. For months, speculation had been building online about the state of their relationship because the two had rarely been seen together in public since late 2025. Naturally, rumors started spreading that their marriage might be in trouble, but those rumors were challenged when Blake suddenly showed up in Wales to support Ryan during a major game involving Wrexham AFC, the football club Ryan co-owns with Rob McElhenney. The match, part of the FA Cup, drew plenty of attention, not just because of the result, but because of how Blake and Ryan behaved in the stands. During the game, cameras caught the couple being unusually affectionate. They were sitting together, smiling, leaning into each other, and showing a lot of physical affection throughout the match. At first, things looked promising for Wrexham as they briefly had momentum, but the excitement didn't last. The team eventually lost to Chelsea FC, knocking them out of the FA Cup. Despite the loss, Blake later shared cheerful photos and captions about the experience, which some fans thought felt a bit tone-deaf considering the defeat. Instead of celebrating, many supporters believed it would have been more appropriate to acknowledge the loss with a more reserved reaction. The cheerful tone of her post quickly became another talking point online. At the same time, people started comparing how the couple shows up for each other publicly. While Blake made the effort to travel across the Atlantic to support Ryan's football club during a high-profile match, critics pointed out that Ryan himself hadn't recently appeared beside Blake during an important legal or professional moment involving her. That contrast sparked debate across social media about whether the public display at the football match was genuine support or simply an attempt to improve public perception of their relationship. Online comment sections were flooded with reactions ranging from supportive to openly skeptical, with some viewers suggesting the moment looked carefully staged rather than spontaneous. Part of the reason the appearance attracted so much scrutiny is because Ryan has spent a significant amount of time in the United Kingdom recently. He's been working there for several months while filming a new Netflix project, which has kept him largely based in London and Wales. That filming schedule has meant the couple has often been in different places, making their sudden reunion at the Wrexham match even more noticeable. For some observers, Blake flying out to join him looked like a partner supporting her spouse's passion project. For others, it looked like a carefully timed moment designed to quiet speculation that had been circulating online for months. The football club itself plays a major role in Ryan's life right now. Since purchasing Wrexham alongside Rob McElhenney, the team has become a major storytelling project for them both. The club's rise through the English football system has been documented extensively and turned into a widely followed narrative about rebuilding a struggling team. But behind the inspirational narrative is a much more complicated financial reality. Running a football club, especially one outside the top tiers of European football, is rarely profitable. Even when a team grows in popularity and media exposure, the costs of operating, upgrading facilities, and competing at higher levels can easily outweigh the revenue. In fact, many clubs rely heavily on owners continuing to invest money just to keep things moving forward. That financial reality has led to some interesting discussions about how the club is funded and managed. While Wrexham's popularity has surged, reports have suggested that the club has still faced financial challenges and required additional investment. In earlier stages, the owners themselves were reportedly owed money by the club due to their own investments. As the team aims for promotion to higher leagues and potentially even the Premier League one day, the cost of competing increases dramatically. Stadium improvements, player wages, and infrastructure upgrades all require major funding, which is why outside investors have increasingly become part of the plan. All of this adds another layer to the story of Blake showing up in Wales. Ryan's involvement with Wrexham isn't just a hobby, it's a massive commitment that pulls him across the world for long periods. That dynamic has sparked questions about how the couple manages their personal life while juggling careers, business ventures, and raising a family. Observers often note that Blake historically stepped back from acting projects for stretches of time, while Ryan's career and business ventures have expanded rapidly. That balance between their professional lives has become part of the broader discussion about how the couple operates both publicly and privately. And that conversation leads to another moment that attracted attention a few years earlier, an appearance Blake made during a local planning meeting in Lewisboro, New York. The meeting involved a major property project connected to land she and Ryan had purchased in Westchester County. What happened during that meeting and how Blake addressed the local planning board ended up becoming another example people pointed to when discussing how the actress interacts with the public outside of Hollywood. The planning meeting in Lewisboro, New York, was supposed to be a routine local government discussion about land use and building permissions. Instead, it became a moment that many people later dissected in detail. At the center of the discussion was a large property owned by Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds, a sprawling piece of land in Westchester County that the couple had purchased years earlier, with plans to build a much larger residence. Because parts of the area contain historically recognized homes and strict zoning regulations, any major construction proposal requires approval from the local planning board. That meant Blake herself appeared at the meeting to address officials and residents about what they intended to build on the property. When Blake began speaking, she opened with a tone that sounded polite and appreciative. She thanked the chairwoman and members of the planning board for the time and effort they put into reviewing projects like this. She even asked whether their roles were volunteer positions, expressing surprise at the amount of work involved in overseeing planning decisions. From her perspective, it seemed like she was trying to show gratitude and establish goodwill with the people responsible for approving the project. She talked about how beautiful she believed the area was, and explained that she and Ryan had chosen the town intentionally because they felt it was one of the most special places they had ever seen. She described the land almost romantically, calling it a place that felt peaceful and perfect for raising a family. But as the discussion continued, the speech gradually turned into something much longer and more personal than many people expected from a zoning meeting. Blake spent a significant amount of time talking about her family and how important privacy was to them. She explained that she and Ryan come from large families and that they frequently have relatives visiting. According to her, the goal of building on the property wasn't just to create a house, but to build a space that could accommodate a growing family and visiting relatives while also allowing them to live without constant attention from the public. She pointed out that being public figures often brings unwanted attention, and they hoped that living on a large piece of land would allow them to maintain some distance from outside distractions. She also emphasized that they had no intention of damaging the land's history or character. During her remarks, she mentioned that they respected the older structures already present on the property and wanted to preserve them whenever possible. Instead of demolishing everything and starting fresh, she explained that the couple intended to keep certain historic buildings intact and incorporate them into the broader layout of the property. Sustainability and environmental considerations were another theme she brought up repeatedly. She described plans involving solar panels and careful land management, framing the entire project as something that would respect nature rather than disrupt it. However, the actual scale of the project became clearer once the details of the proposal were discussed by architects and representatives involved with the application. The couple's property had already been substantial when they first purchased it, but over time additional parcels were acquired, expanding the land holdings significantly. The original house on the land wasn't exactly small either. It was a roughly 7,500 square foot residence with 7 bedrooms and multiple bathrooms, complete with fireplaces, large living spaces, and surrounding structures such as cottages and barns. The property also included equestrian facilities, pasture land, and mature trees that had been there for generations. Despite that already large residence, the new proposal involved constructing a significantly larger main home nearby. Plans described a massive modern house that would measure around 14,000 square feet, along with additional structures like a gym and indoor pool building. Instead of replacing the original house entirely, the design concept essentially turned the property into a multi-building compound. The older residence would remain, while the new mansion would become the primary living space for the family. The surrounding cottages and support buildings would still exist on the property as well, creating a large private estate hidden within the wooded acreage. Because the neighborhood contains homes dating back more than a century, the proposal required multiple variances and approvals. The property itself traces back to structures built around the early 20th century, meaning it falls into a category where historical preservation rules can complicate new development. Local planning officials needed to examine everything from driveway access to septic systems and environmental impact. During the meeting, engineers and planners explained that the new house would use an existing driveway rather than constructing additional entrances, and that soil testing had already been conducted to identify safe locations for septic and water systems. They also outlined how the proposed buildings, including the gym and indoor pool, would function as accessory structures connected to the main residence. For people following the situation later, the contrast between Blake's friendly opening remarks and the sheer size of the project became a major talking point. On one hand, she repeatedly described the family's desire to blend into the environment and respect the town's character. On the other hand, the construction plans involved a modern compound that would be significantly larger than many neighboring homes. Critics interpreted the speech as overly polished and somewhat condescending, arguing that it sounded less like a zoning presentation and more like a public relations pitch. Others believed she was simply trying to explain the family's needs in a way that would make sense to local officials and residents. Regardless of how people interpreted the moment, the meeting showed a side of celebrity life that most fans rarely see. Instead of red carpets or film premieres, it revealed the practical reality of famous people negotiating local regulations and community concerns just like anyone else, only on a much larger scale. The property itself had already been owned for several years by that point, and construction was expected to move forward once approvals were finalized. But even years later, reports suggested that the project had taken far longer than anticipated, partly because of the complex approval process involved in building something that large in a historically sensitive area. Even after the planning approvals began moving forward, the massive property project connected to Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds continued to attract attention for how long it was taking to actually materialize. Years passed after the initial discussions with the planning board in Lewisboro, New York, and despite the couple owning more than 100 acres across several parcels in Westchester County, the full vision for the property still hadn't been completed. What began as a plan to build a new residence gradually evolved into something much larger, a private compound designed to give the family maximum space, privacy, and control over their surroundings. The idea behind the project was fairly straightforward from a lifestyle perspective. As two globally recognized celebrities, Blake and Ryan have spent years dealing with constant media attention and public curiosity about their personal lives. A large, secluded estate offers a level of protection from that kind of attention. By building a main residence deep within the property and surrounding it with additional structures, guest accommodations, recreational facilities, and older, preserved buildings, the family could essentially create a self-contained environment where everyday life happens far from public view. The proposed design included not only the massive new home, but also accessory buildings, such as a gym and an indoor pool facility, along with the older structures that were already part of the land. What made the situation especially interesting for observers was the contrast between the original house and the one being planned. The first residence on the land was already substantial by most standards, measuring around 7,500 square feet with 7 bedrooms, multiple fireplaces, and large living spaces. It sat among mature trees and open pasture areas that had once supported equestrian activities. Yet even that large home wasn't considered enough for the long-term plans the couple had for the property. Instead of renovating or expanding the original structure, the proposal aimed to construct a much larger, modern house nearby while leaving the historic building standing. The result would be an estate where the older home and cottages function as secondary structures, while the newly built mansion becomes the primary residence. For people who studied the planning documents and property listings from when the land was originally sold, the scale of the project quickly became clear. The land itself includes acres of meadow and wooded terrain, barns, stables, and multiple outbuildings that had been part of the estate long before the actors purchased it. Over time, additional parcels were acquired, pushing the total size of the property to roughly 110 acres. In rural parts of Westchester County, large estates like this aren't unheard of, but the proposals still required careful review because the surrounding community includes homes tied to local historical preservation rules. Those local rules were the reason Blake appeared at the planning meeting in the first place. Major construction projects in historically sensitive areas often require extensive documentation, environmental reviews, and community input before anything can move forward. Architects and engineers involved in the project had to explain how everything from drainage to driveway access would work, while also demonstrating that the new buildings wouldn't damage the landscape or surrounding ecosystem. In the end, officials examined soil conditions, septic placement, and land grading plans before granting the necessary permissions for development to continue. Despite approvals moving ahead, the project has remained slow to finish, which isn't unusual for estates of that scale. Large private homes often take years to complete once design changes, permits, and construction phases are factored in. For the couple, the property represents something bigger than just another house. It's essentially meant to be a long-term family base, a place where their children can grow up with space, security, and distance from the constant attention that comes with being famous. When all of these different stories are viewed together, the planning meeting in New York, the ongoing property development, and the very public moment in Wales during the football match, it paints an interesting picture of how the lives of Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds operate behind the scenes. On one side, there's the carefully crafted public image, the playful celebrity couple who joke on social media and appear together at major events. On the other side, there's the much more complex reality of managing businesses, properties, investments, and family life across multiple countries. The appearance at the Wrexham AFC game, where the couple were seen openly supporting each other during the club's FA Cup match against Chelsea FC, became a symbol of that public image once again. Whether people saw the moment as genuine support between partners or simply another public display, it reminded everyone how closely celebrity relationships are watched and interpreted by audiences online. Every gesture, every appearance, and every decision, whether it's buying a football club, building a massive estate, or showing up to a match in Wales, quickly becomes part of a much larger narrative that fans and critics debate endlessly. And that's really the unusual reality of modern celebrity culture. Personal decisions that would normally remain private, like where to build a home or how to support a spouse's project, end up turning into public conversations analyzed by millions of people. In the case of Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds, those moments have simply become another chapter in the ongoing story of one of Hollywood's most recognizable couples.